So I finished annotating Sunbearer Trials, and I love it so, so dearly. And I gotta say, so I'm reading it for the 3rd time this year. And I just read, what chapter was it, 15? Yeah, it was chapter 15. I think chapter 15 is among one of my favorites. Like, I think it's top 3. I think my 3 favorite scenes have gotta be, number 1, the scene where Teo swings, like, lets out his wings, and they are the wings of a male Quetzal. That one, so good. 2 being the scene where Aurelio's tells Teo that he never touched his wings because he never said he could, and then the 3, this scene. And listen, 2 and 3 are very close together. The only reason 2 I like a little bit more is just because I really love Aurelio. And I like chapter 16 for several reasons, and one of them being, like, when Naya defends Teo after they ask him if he has a cloaca, and then she's like, what's a cloaca? Because she defended him without even knowing, like, why he was upset. She just knew, like, she just defended him because she knew it upset him. She knew from his reaction and cared about him enough to just immediately go on the defensive, despite the fact that she had no idea why it upset him. That's what a true best friend does. It's like, I don't really understand, but you're upset, so I'm gonna defend you to no end, and I appreciate that so much. But on top of that, I like the scene because it's, you know, I feel that people can relate to that in, like, more ways than one. I feel that with Teo being trans, many trans people can relate to that experience, because I feel it's a pretty universal experience of people just thinking it's okay to ask what's in your pants. Have you gotten, like, the surgery, in terms of, like, you know, bottom surgery and stuff, when it's like, what? That's none of your business. What? And that's a really cool and charming thing about, when Aidan Thomas writes his books, because they're, like, fantasy books, he shows how, like, the trans experience and ways that things that people can relate to, but he does it in some ways. It's cool, like what he does with the wings, where he experiences gender euphoria from his wings, like, finally becoming his, and straying away from, like, you know, the typical, you know, chest dysphoria, because, like, yes, many trans people do have chest dysphoria, but that's not the only experience trans people have with dysphoria, you know? And in the context of, like, a fantasy novel, in the context of a character like Teo, where his wings would look different because of what he was assigned at birth, like, that, it makes total sense. And that's a really cool thing that I just really love. And, like, over when you read Cemetery Boys, it's, you know, with Yadriel and being a brujo and trying to prove that he's a brujo, and that whole conversation of, like, oh, are you trying to prove that you're a brujo, or are you trying to prove that you're a man, like, that thing. And in the end, it was kind of a mix of both, of proving that he not only was capable of being a brujo, but he was also a boy. He wanted his family to see and recognize that he was a guy. Straying away from the topic at hand, I just really think it's really cool to have, it wasn't even about his gender in that instance either, but it, you know, it shows from a different lens, like, what it can be like for trans people to have questions like, what's in your pants, be asked to us, and but it's not, you know, the same, but that's not the question, you know, it's just a different way to look at when people ask that question. And on top of that, like, that is true for people who just in general are different, and, like, people think it's okay to just ask you invasive questions, like when you're disabled, and it's like, well, like, how does this work? It's like, what? Because I feel like that's just a constant, like, journey and battle you're fighting, is just people thinking that, like, oh, just because you have a different experience from them, that you want to explain how it's different, and that they're allowed to just keep asking, despite the fact that it's like, you know, like, if I asked you the same thing, you would be really uncomfortable. Do you get that? Do you not understand that? But with that aside, the main reason that this chapter that chapter is my favorite. One of my favorites is because of the conversation between Zio and Teo about Teo being trans. Because, like, so many trans kids don't have someone like Teo in their life, don't know any older trans people who can talk to them about what their experience is like with being trans. And that's just really cool. And, like, the conversation itself doesn't really add anything to the plot, at least not from my observation, but I feel like it was just there just so that, you know, young trans kids reading this book could have some semblance of, you know, an older trans friend to tell you what it's like and show you what it can be. Someone who may not necessarily understand you, but, like, understands to an extent what you're going through. Plus adding on the reassurance of, like, you know, you don't need to, you can be, you know, agender, non-binary, or what other terms did he use? Also, I think it's just so important that they used those terms, was the, yeah, agender, bigender, and non-binary. Like, I think this is the first time I've ever seen a book use the terms bigender and agender. Like, I will scream from the rooftops how important it is to, like, have these terms, like, used in books and stuff, especially books for young kids. Like, I remember when, like, reading Sun and the Star, and when they said, like, bisexual and gay, and it was, or, you know, lesbian, queer, and I just got so excited to see these terms used in, you know, a book meant for young kids, middle grade fantasy novel, because we should normalize using these terms. We don't need to necessarily push that they have to be used, but it is important to acknowledge that there are options and that these terms exist, and introduce these terms to kids, because sometimes they know they're different and they just don't know how to define that. And so giving them these terms and, you know, the opening to look into them if they wanted to is really important. Anyway, if you haven't, you should really read the Sunbearer trials. Seriously. I feel like I don't even know how many videos are out there of me with this book and this shirt at this point. Like, I wear this shirt an excessive amount at this point. Read some Sunbearer trials. I have made it my goal to build the Sunbearer trials fandom because I need more people to read this book and to talk to about this book.